Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this session of the Fall 2023 of the Industry Leaders Talk series, hosted by the New York Institute of Technology's College of Engineering and Computing Sciences. My name is Babak Beheshti, Dean of the College. This series is co-hosted by our college, as well as the IEEE Region 1. Our audience today is composed of IEEE professional members, as well as student members from across the Northeastern United States, in addition to the College of Engineering's current students, alumni, faculty, staff, and a number of distinguished guests. I would like to thank the College of Engineering's Dean's Executive Advisory Board, particularly its chair, Dr. Robert DeFazio, who has been instrumental in organizing this series. Today's industry leader presentation is titled Learning from Experienced Entrepreneurs, the Good and the Bad. The panel discussing this topic is composed of leaders in the industry and is moderated by Mr. Mitch Maiman. Mitch is the co-founder of IPS and currently serving in a consulting role as a strategist in business development. Mitch has a long-established record of having built and run high-performance engineering organizations working in innovation-driven advanced development, as well as technology product development. Mitch also is a member of the College of Engineering and Computing Sciences Dean's Executive Advisory Board. Without any further ado, now I will pass it on to our speakers for today's session.
Thank you, Dr. Beheshti, and thank you again to all of our panelists who joined us today. Mr. Maiman, the floor is now yours.
Thank you very much. My name is Mitch Maiman. I'm the president, former president and co-founder of Intelligent Product Solutions. It's a product development professional services company based here on Long Island. And this is my first direct endeavor, as an entrepreneur, and we successfully sold the company 5 years ago, and I've stayed on in a consulting role for my company and the company that acquired us. And with that, I'm going to have our panelists introduce themselves. Tom, why don't we start with you?
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Tom Van Laan, and I'm the CEO and founder of CloudCalc Incorporated. I founded the company in 2014, and what it does is it develops software tools for engineers. And by engineers, I don't mean software engineers, but rather more the engineers who design and build things, such as structures or piping systems specifically. Now, what I've been doing is actually the same thing I've been doing for 40 years, however, in the fourth iteration. So I initially got into this line of work, or I initially became an entrepreneur in this area back in 1979 or 1980. Later, I tried again in the mid-80s. I became a pioneer in moving engineers who are very resistant to change from the mainframe onto the PC. My most successful company was Co-8 Engineering Software of Houston, Texas. In 2008, we sold 80% to private equity. And then in 2010, much like Mitch, we sold to a strategic acquirer. And the way I got into this business is in '79, I came out of MIT with a structural engineering degree. I got a job with Bechtel Power Corporation working on analysis of piping systems. And I just, for some reason, found something that I love to do. And at the same time, as a confluence of a change in society, personal computers were coming out. And I realized that engineers could not afford to use computer programs because it typically costs between $500 and $1,000 to run something, to run an analysis. And I said, why can't we do this on PCs? So I decided that's the line I was going to go in. At the time, I'd met my girlfriend, future wife, and I just hammered her with my plans for the future. And my problem was I had enough money to either buy an engagement ring or a computer. And I asked her what I should do. And she said, go for the computer, which tells me that I think I made the right choice. And here, 40 some odd years later, I'm doing the exact same thing. But now I'm trying to move these resistant engineers from the PC to the cloud. And that's a very hard move because, as I said, they're very change resistant. So that's what I'm doing. And by the way, just other entrepreneurial experience. I've invested in close to 50 startups and early stage companies. I've served as a mentor in 5 different startup incubators, and I'm on the board of trustees of New York Tech as the co-chair of their entrepreneurial and innovation committee. So that's my bona fides.
Thank you again, Tom. Janet, you're on mute too. You have to unmute.
Yes, I did. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. That was interesting. So as an entrepreneur, I guess I feel like you really can't become an entrepreneur. You're almost sort of you're an entrepreneur when you're born in many ways, because you're always looking at different things and how you can. I started my first business when I was a child. So my company today was founded in July of 2021, and the name of the company is Bellamia Technologies. And we are a cart-based laser system that has multiple lasers in it, and then it has 2 other devices that are required for skin rejuvenation. And what is skin rejuvenation? It addresses many facets of skin issues. It can address scarring and acne and rosacea, which is the redness that many people find when they're born, sun damage, and it can also take years off of the face. So it's appealing for not only necessity, including people that are burn victims or wounded warriors, but it's also addressing the needs of people from an aesthetic standpoint. As a community in the United States, we are very much youth driven, and you all that are listening, you students are part of that motivate all to stay energetic and young. And many of the baby boomers are working much later in life. And because of that, they want to, the first thing that you see when you meet someone is the perception of who they are by their face. And so this is something that will address that youthfulness that many people that continue to work in later years want to have. And then for younger people, if they've had acne, that can affect how they perceive themselves and how they're perceived by others, scarring and burns. So all of that is addressed with this cart-based laser device. It is unique. It will have multiple lasers and, as I said, a complete system for skin rejuvenation that has never before been offered. And I find it's important because this is my second time in the aesthetic sector. The aesthetic sector addresses many needs. Doctors are seeking ways to get away from insurance companies, and this is a cash-based business. That allows the doctor to have an opportunity to stay in their practice longer, to get to know their patients in a different way, not just when they're ill, but in other ways, and to solve many of their personal desires. So I think that's important. And then from a standpoint of the patient, it makes you feel better about yourself in many different ways. So I'm motivated to do this. I've been in lasers. I am a laser CEO. This is the 3rd company that I've had that addresses lasers. And I like the fact that we are addressing the needs, unmet needs of physicians that are key to this sector, and also address the needs of the patients.
Thank you, Janet. David?
Sure, thank you, and pleasure to be here, and I hope everybody gets some benefit out of this. It's a really great focus group that you brought together, and really so relevant for kids that are trying to make decisions as they're growing up, you know, what they want to do. And entrepreneurship is something that I take very seriously. I have become a serial entrepreneur. I currently have 10 companies under a single umbrella that we created a holding company for. One of them is a large security integrator. We do camera systems and door access control in hundreds of K through 12 school districts. That's A+ technology and security. We're actually as 32nd largest security integrator in the country. So we do some very big projects, a lot of public sector, a lot of government offices, a lot of school districts, a lot of commercial buildings, even casinos that we do as A+. And we're pretty full service in all the different things that we do there. I started the company 34 years ago in 1989. And we started with one company and slowly started acquiring companies and taking on partnerships. And to me, that's what led to becoming a serial entrepreneur, where I found opportunity I'd see something and some technology some other people might have and try to bring that under our umbrella and create all these different companies. In addition to A+, one of the other companies that we have is a company called IP Video Corporation. IP Video is pretty unique. We're a manufacturer, software developer in the IoT space, the Internet of Things. And we manufacture some really interesting products. One of them is a walk-through metal detector that we have at Camp David, in Detroit schools, in Aflac and Facebook corporate headquarters. We manufacture that here on Long Island, which is pretty cool. Another product we do is a lecture capture recording system that does perfect synchronization of audio and video over multiple cameras. And we do a lot of police interrogation rooms. We do San Jose PD, San Francisco, Green Bay, Wisconsin, Richmond, Virginia, Jacksonville, and Suffolk County PD. And then the really cool product that's gotten us on the world stage is a product called Halo, and it's a product right next to me. Halo is an IoT smart sensor with artificial intelligence and machine learning, turned out to become the fastest growing product in the entire security industry. We actually do everything from vape detection. We're the #1 vape detector for e-cigarettes in the world. We do vapor THC, early warning for fire and smoke, air quality. We do carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, methane, propane, natural gas detection, chemical detection, temperature, humidity, air pressure, light levels, even gunshot detection, keyword detection. You can trigger it by just saying help emergency, and it triggers a keyword from the device.
Security notified.
Halo is developed by our entire engineering team here in New York. We manufacture it here in New York, and we have 19 patents on it. It's literally the fastest growing product in the entire security industry. What's interesting about IP Video and Halo is that I acquired some of the talent for IP Video back in 2006 when I acquired that company, and it lost money until last year. And it was kind of sticking to what I believed in and the future of this. And it's had 100% growth 4 years in a row now. And it's larger than all the rest of my companies put together with what we've done with IP Video. So we're really excited about where it's going. We're on a world stage now where we're doing projects literally all over the world, in Australia, in the Middle East, in South America, and Canada. And we manufacture everything right here on Long Island. So we're really excited about that. And then one of the other companies I have does things related to STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, where we do about $10 million of STEM labs into New York City schools every year. So we kind of created a whole ecosystem where we're doing everything from getting kids at pre-K to get them interested in becoming scientists, technologists, and engineers. We help them as they go through 12th grade and do engineering level programs there in STEM. And then we start to hire them as interns from the colleges. And we created this whole ecosystem and trying to make Long Island a better place with the technology that we do and have a lot of fun doing it, which is an important part of it.
Thank you, David. That was great. Ryan, you're on deck.
Hey everyone, how are you? Let me just pull up my notes here. So I actually run 2 companies as well. It's a bit more easier that they're in the same industry. So I have a vertical farming company called Cubic Acres. I also have a newer company I just started with my partner at Stony Brook University. I licensed his portfolio of IP related to converting waste like food waste or agricultural waste into safe fertilizers and into a hydrogel substrate that we also use to grow the crops in. My long-term goal is to build a self-sustaining vertical farm that doesn't have any other inputs. So we're designing a agrivoltaic vertical farm system that also produces its own fertilizer and hydrogels based on the waste it made from the farm, like the roots, for example, using the Stony Brook technology. In the past, I ran a few companies in Israel. I commercialized some robotics technology at NASA. And my first company in undergraduate school was a solar-powered refrigeration system, which Mitch knows all too well about. It was a great endeavor that I learned a lot from. Why do I do it? Well, I really enjoy creating something from nothing. So that's kind of why I got into being an entrepreneur. I originally wanted to be a product designer and developer, which I was at Oakley Sunglasses for a little bit, which was that was a fun job. But aside from that, I really enjoy solving problems and overcoming challenges, which being an entrepreneur is just chock full of them. When a company typically gets to a steady state, I get a little bored and hire a friend of mine or someone I know that's really good at operations, and they'll take over that for me. So I could continue on the harder, difficult things to solve. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
Lead into the next segment, which is for us, the panelists, to talk about what they love about being an entrepreneur and what got them into doing this, how they end up picking this as what they do for a living. And Janet, if you don't mind, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. Thank you, Mitch. I think for me, it's a love of solving problems, and I love technical. So medical device is my field. I love working with talented and bright people. Whenever I have a concept of what I'm interested in, for example, with the latest company, I decided that I wanted to do something for skin rejuvenation. I felt it was a real issue, and I wanted to confirm that. So we did a lot of preliminary work with talented people in the sector to understand what they were addressing. And that started at different levels, because there's different levels. So there were estheticians, there were nurses, there were physicians' assistants, and there were also key opinion leaders. The key opinion leaders I had access to because I had a previous company that was also in aesthetics. So starting a second company in this aesthetic sector really allowed me to move much faster. I love understanding what they do and understanding where the shortcomings are for the existing devices and taking that and seeing if we can solve that issue. So in starting this company, I brought a team of engineers that had previously worked with me. We went to one of the doctors that is now the head of my scientific advisory board. She had 70 lasers in her practice. That's a lot. And so we were able to see how she practiced, what she did, and then where the shortcomings were. Then we went back as a team and determined whether or not we could address those things. So that's not only market validation, but it's also not trying to force your concepts or your ideas on the sector. And then we established a scientific advisory board. I love that because you get to meet lots of interesting, talented people and world-renowned people that lecture and do things to solve these issues for people all over the world. And once we established that, I built the team. Building the team, I love engineers. I think they're probably my favorite sector of people. I should have been an engineer, but I love working with them and the talent that they have. So putting together that team was important. And then being able to go back to people that I know from my previous company, like IPS, and having them work with us was really something that I enjoy. So those facets of finding the opportunity, determining whether or not you can solve, possibilities to solve it, working with established experts in a sector, and then going back and building your team, all of that is satisfying to me. And I think one of the next steps that is most satisfying is when you start building that product and you start seeing the reality of what you are creating. I like the design. I like working with the patents, determining, and I have robust patents for all of my companies. I think that's important. It shows uniqueness for each facet that you're addressing. So those are some of the things that I enjoy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think it's one thing just to note just so far between Ryan and you, Janet, nowhere in the conversation about why you decided to go and be an entrepreneur did the subject of money come up, that I want to be rich. It's really something else. But
Yeah.
maybe Tom, you could talk about, what you love about being an entrepreneur and, what inspires and motivates you going on.
Yeah, it's not money, at least not initially. And, I think I mentioned the fact that my wife said, buy a computer rather than a ring. It's very important to have a very strong support system before you go into this among your friends, mentors, loved ones, spouse, because you're going to be working long and hard for not a whole lot of money for a long time. But anyway, what I love about it is, aside from the nobility of working for very little money, is the fact that you're really betting on yourself and you're putting everything you have on your own abilities. Can I do this? It's no different than I'm going to try to be a tightrope walker and conquer this activity. But, really the idea about identifying a problem, having a vision of how to solve that problem, executing it, and if you do it right, having the success. And what's the success measured? That's where the money comes in typically, is the market responding. There's nothing that feels better than that, to point to something and said, I did that from soup to nuts. And the real reason, the other thing the reason I like that is I worked for a number of corporations before starting out, or in between starting the various activities. And a lot of you in the audience are going to do this too. And you're going to have this choice, probably initially, at least you're going to be working for a company. And a lot of these corporations have very bureaucratic restraints on what you can do. And their job is to keep you in a box and not let you bloom the way that you really should. When I was working for Bechtel, I was working for Abasco, I wanted to do more. I want to do more. I saw opportunities, and we can do things this way. We can increase productivity. We can automate. I remember before the PCs came out, I programmed a structural analysis on a programmable calculator, and they told me, no, we can't do that because we've always used hand calculations and we don't change and things like that. And also I was told I couldn't exercise. I couldn't do everything I wanted until I'd been promoted, and they had rules about you have to do 5 years in grade before being promoted. So I really chafed under those restraints. And I said, I've got ideas, I've got solutions, I believe in myself. I quit my job and walked away with the idea that somehow, well, actually I had a 5-year plan of getting into it, but that's a much longer story. But it's really, to me, the sky's the limit. It's only based on what we're capable of. And if you have confidence in yourself, you know, there's no better life than an entrepreneur.
Yes, thank you, Tom. David, tell us about, well, how you got into this and why you're an entrepreneur, what you love about it.
Sure, I'd be happy to. When I was 13 years old, I was a mechanic. We used to work 60 hours a week at 13 years old as a mechanic. And when I was old enough to go to college, I got accepted to Rochester Institute of Technology, and I couldn't afford to go, so I wasn't able to go to college. And I ended up taking a job with an aunt and uncle that were just starting up a new business in New York City. And it was the three of us when the company started. It was in the moving and storage business in New York City. When I left them 13 years later, the company had doubled in size every year to the point that it was doing $30 million a year. And I had done every role in that company, from accounting to dispatching to repairing the trucks, to business automation. And this is in the early days of computers. And I learned to program and taught myself at night how to program on these Unix-based computers. And I found this passion and love for technology, you know, during that time. And then when I left them after 13 years, I knew I had the bug. I wanted to start my own company, and I wanted to start a technology company. So I started that in 1989. And we became what I consider to be a convergence company. We do all types of technology evolving into security and finding and reinventing ourselves. Probably over the 34 years, we've reinvented the company at least 6 times, in addition to all the different acquisitions. And once you have that bug, it's you can't. I'm still looking for opportunities of things, and that's what's different when you're an entrepreneur. You can see the same thing that somebody else sees, and you see it differently. You see what it can become and what the vision is. And the best thing I can tell you is you have to follow your dream, your vision, and you have to love what you do. I love what I do. It's so much fun. I get up every day excited about doing it. And but there's stress. You know, don't you know? I don't want to mislead people. There's a lot of stress when you own your own business. You know, making payroll, making sure. When I originally started this company, I actually had just bought a house. I had 2 kids and a third one on the way, and I left a job that I was earning decent money, and took all the risk. And I even had a brand new boat I had to sell at the time. So I took all the risk with doing it, but I believed in myself and knew what I wanted to do. And now it's turned into a very, very successful venture. But, you know, you have to have the good and bad of it to appreciate, you know, the better times of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, David.
Welcome.
Ryan, I think you already told us a bit about how you got into this entrepreneurial. I've known you for a long time. But I'll say there's a common thread is that I think all of us have had a vision of a problem that we wanted to solve that we couldn't solve any other way, and couldn't do it within the confines of other companies. And so in a way, that is I think been a common thread of the motivation for all of us. Ryan, I've known since he was in school. And I know, I've known all along that Ryan was going to be an entrepreneur because he was chomping at the bit before he even finished Stony Brook. So that was a common thread. David, you were about to get into this, and maybe I'll pick it up here with you. Some of the challenging moments. I mean, it's not a rise to the top straight line, right? There are bad times. There's days when you're saying, "What am I, God's name, am I doing here?" Tell us about some of the challenges, the tough days you've been through, and what you've learned from some of those tough experiences.
Sure. So, with us, when I tell you I reinvented the company at least a half a dozen times, it's because we had to reinvent the company. Either technology that we were doing became mass produced. We used to sell computers in the early days, and we used to make 20% margin on the computers, and then slowly it kept going down and down and down to the point of 3% margin. And we said, this doesn't work, it's not sustainable. And that's when we had to reinvent ourselves and take that same technology we were doing, but apply it into a different industry, the security industry. And now we could be able to get more margin from doing that. And that's how we were able to reinvent it there. In the also related to that, in our STEM business that got started in 2004, before STEM was a word, we were able to take a lot of low margin products, whether it was computers or science probes or different things like that, assemble them together into a bundle, and now get it back up to a reasonable margin to make the company profitable. So, the challenges you face, we've had so many where there are times where the company fell off a cliff. And then all of a sudden we're able to reinvent ourselves, and you can't be afraid to take risk, but you do it as a calculated risk. And a lot of people look at, an entrepreneur and say, you're crazy doing that and taking all these risks. But most entrepreneurs are in their head weighing those risks, and they're willing to take a little bit of risk. You have to take risks to be a successful entrepreneur. If you're not taking risks, you're not working hard enough.
Right. That's really good, David. Janet, maybe you'll share some of your challenging moments that you've had. I've been on the journey with you for a little while, so I know some of them, but maybe you'll share the ones you can.
Sure. I think what David said is true. And this is one thing I like to say to people: when you're investing in a company, you are investing really in the people. You're investing in the leadership. You're not investing necessarily in the technology. So you bet on the jockey, you don't bet on the horse. Because if you are an entrepreneur, just like David said, and Tom said, you have to be tenacious. You're going to get a lot of resistance along the way. And you have to be so passionate about what you're doing that the resistance doesn't affect you. It has to just flow off of you like water, off of a duck, right? And it is going to be a challenging road along the way. There'll be many challenges. Sometimes for me, it's been finding the right personnel, building something and then having to redo facets of it. Having a technical person that in my first company, we acquired the intellectual property and it had a lot of NIH grant technology behind it. This is a new functional imaging technology that has not been developed for 25 years. It's competitive to PET CT and MRI. And there's a lot of challenges. I thought we were initially going to be able to do a comparative analysis against biopsy, and it wasn't allowed. The NIH said, no, you're going to, and FDA said, you can't do that. You're going to be restricted to biopsy only. So we had to walk out of that meeting finding out that we were now going to have to do a pre-market approval, which is something that's done by pharma companies. Took 15 years to get that product approved by the FDA. So, and $250 million so that capital had to be raised, and it came to me to have to raise that capital. So there's been a lot of obstacles along the way. One of the things I will say that I learned from one of my mentors, when I changed to aesthetics, and I, did that for sort of like what Ryan said, you get to a certain point and you want to have other people do some of that talent of running the operation, and then you move to the next thing that's exciting for you and interesting. And I did. Aesthetics was an interesting thing for me. But in doing that for a second time, I've learned that staying in an industry sector makes it easier. I wish, in fact, that although I'd always been in medical devices, I wish that I had stayed in the sector, one same sector, because you get to know the people, you get to know the competitors, you get to know even the FDA policies in that area. You understand better, how you approach for patents. And then you have access to suppliers, supply sources, and ancillary support like IPS. in my past company, we had used IPS. When I started this company, I went immediately to IPS. So those shortcuts from the experience of being in that sector make a big difference. And it also had many of my same investors just followed me into this company because they're so pleased with what's happening. So I think those are lessons that I've learned, you know, and I'm a serial entrepreneur as the other individuals are, but learning that could have made so much difference. The time is such a shorter time in being in the same sector.
Yeah. Thank you, Janet. Ryan, tell us a bit about the challenges you faced along the way, and you know, kind of what you've learned from those.
This, like I said before, it's full of challenges, which are fun, usually in hindsight. But let's see. So one of my first big challenges and lesson was my first company. I raised money from a problematic investor, and this kind of changed my course and outlook on how I raise money and who I get involved with on every venture since then. So now, usually, I'm very picky on who I partner in business or take in as an investor. And usually, it's not just for the capital I need; it's for other things they could bring to the table. Like, could they help me commercialize it? Is there a downstream sales channel they provide? Do they have industry experience or knowledge? These are all things that you never just take money for money. And that's when I was a 22-year-old entrepreneur, I made that mistake. Um, and also, honestly, I want to add that since this audience is college kids, the best time to really start a company is when you're in college. Because as soon as you graduate, the pressure's on. And then the longer you wait, you have wife, kids, house, mortgage, etc. It gets a lot more difficult to start a business. Yeah, so there's a lot of resources available at school. And there's an old Japanese saying I like, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the second best time is right now. So
Right.
just
There you go.
start, you know, if you have an idea. It's taking away at it.
Yeah. Tom, tell us about some of the most challenging moments you've had in your career.
I've been through a million in 40 years. I've been through recessions of 2001, 2008. I've been through employee fist fights that I had to break up. I've been through 5 exits that died, 2 of them the day before closing and things like that. But really the worst, the one that turned my hair gray, and I still shiver to think about this, is, and I really don't like to talk about this, so I hope there's nobody on this Zoom call right now, but it was in 2005, I happened to discover that some of our products had actually made it to a sanctioned nation through no fault of our own. However, that's irrelevant. And I started to try to figure out what to do about this. And basically, once you find out that a product has gotten to a sanctioned nation or violated some sort of export rules, you have 2 choices. You can not do anything and thus risk criminal penalties, including jail time, including massive fines, or you can bring in an external law firm to throw yourself open, a full investigation, which happened to end up costing us $1 million. Not quite Janet's $250 million, but for us, 1 million, and then go throw yourself on the mercy of the US government and self-disclose is what they call it. And at the time, I realized that I had the choice of potentially destroying the company in 2 ways, either, you know, bankrupt from a huge outpour, you know, $1 million payment that didn't really improve productivity, or on the other side, potentially risking the company being shut down, myself put in jail. And I probably did not sleep for 3 months trying to figure out what to do. And in the end, we decided to go what I eventually decided was the correct route. And we brought in a export law firm from DC that billed us $1 million to go through, interview every employee, go through every email, go and talk to all of our international vendors, etc. And then we filed with the US government a report like that. And we ended up getting fined by them. Commerce fined us $9,000 and Treasury $7,000. So it turned out, because of the fact we self-disclosed, it was okay from them, but still it cost us a fortune. And it really is by far the biggest challenge and the most stressful thing that ever happened to me. And I think what I learned from that is that I was too focused on, okay, product development, taking market share, growing revenue, growing sales. And there's still a whole lot of super mundane things. You know, I said, it's, as an entrepreneur, it's all on you when you're doing it. But when you screw up, or when there's something to screw up happen, there's not a lot of support there behind you, and it all comes here. And to this day, you know, I consider it one of the worst times of my life, career-wise and life-wise. But that was, the other things are easy to solve. Fist fights between employees. I've got an MBA from New York Tech, and I remember my organizational psychology class, and they taught me how to handle that, and I did. They said, get out of the way. But anyway, that was my biggest challenge by far. And it's just a reminder, yes, grow your company, but keep an eye on all this mundane stuff as well, so it doesn't come up and destroy what you've basically built.
I think, you know, my experience is similar to some of yours. I mean, the one thing I can say about being an entrepreneur is the buck stops here.
Mm-hmm.
And there are startups, early, companies that start up and they get a lot of investor money, and they're playing the whole game with somebody else's money.
Right.
And that's different than I think most of us. Most of us, when we're not just in, David, you mentioned you had to sell your boat. I know personally, when I started IPS in 2007, I didn't know this, nobody knew this. This was the start of the recession. What stupid ass time could it be to start a business, but services business, but the start of the recession? Well, that's what we did. And my partner and I self-funded. We had everything we owned on the line. And when business went down that first 6 months, I mean, we were just 2 or 3 payrolls maybe from bankruptcy. And that was tough. And I think if you're an entrepreneur, when they say you're all in, you have to realize what that means. And as Ryan said earlier, even if you're a college student, you're not risking very much when you come out of school. You don't have a lot to risk. But those of us who went at it, after a few years of life, let's put it that way, we risked it all. I mean, saying risk it all, we mean everything. So I mean, you have to just be aware that that's the case. I mean, in my case, what did I learn? I learned I had friends among my customers, and they didn't give us enough business to be totally profitable, but they gave me enough business to weather that 6, 7, 8 weeks, 12 weeks of recession till things bounced back, and they saved us all and saved my company. And so, I learned that you can't do it without friends. I think Janet, you've spoken about your relationships and network. I mean, then all of us, David's spoken about partnerships. You can't do it alone. It's not always people inside your company, those you need, but you need friends on the outside that you can depend on, if nothing else, for psychological counseling to keep you from jumping out the window on the bad times. So that was really, really, really good discussion. Maybe David, let's start this one with you. What would you do differently? You've got a long, successful career. What would you do differently based on what you know now?
So I kind of said it earlier, I didn't get to go to college because I couldn't afford to go. What I missed was getting education in business, in accounting, in psychology, in leadership, all those things I had to learn the hard way. And if I had the knowledge today that I've gained over the last 40, plus years, I probably could have been successful 20 years ago. So that's the missing part, is I really didn't know how to run a business. I didn't know, how to lead people. I didn't know how to understand different personality types and be able to understand that when you're running a company and leading people that you have to understand. And then the biggest thing was learning to delegate. And you can't do everything yourself. And the biggest turning point for me was, at one point I had 14 direct reports, and that doesn't work. And then I had a retreat with my whole senior team and picked 3 people to be my direct reports, and everybody else in the company reported to them. And that was a turning point in our company. We changed the culture of the company. We invest a lot in both external as well as internal exercises of building culture. And to me, that's been the biggest thing. But the missing part was I got my education from the School of Hard Knocks as opposed to getting it where I should have gotten it.
Thank you, David. Tom, why don't you tell us about what you might have done differently?
Aside from that one event that I just mentioned, I can't think of a whole lot, but what David just mentioned about missing out on all of this preparation and the skills and things like that, it's very interesting. I mentioned 20 minutes ago about I had this 5-year plan. I initially in 79 or 80 made my effort to start a company doing this pipe stress on a PC, and it didn't quite go well and it failed. And then I decided that what I really needed was, and I made a 5-year plan to gain all of these skills that I thought I needed and that David just mentioned. So what I said, I need to learn how to program. So I need a master's of computer science. I need to know how to run a company. So I need an MBA. I need some sales experience. So I went off and got a job as a sales. I said, I need to have some sort of credentials that I can show people, yes, I know what I'm doing. So I got a professional engineering license in New York, and I wrote the book on piping engineering that basically became the standard for 25 years. And I really prepared, and I got all these skills before I went out and started this thing again. And looking back now, maybe I didn't need to do all of that. I don't regret any of that, but maybe I could have been like David and said, I've got an idea, I've got a plan, let me dive in and pick it up the hard way. So David, you and I can switch lives here, I think. But aside from that, I wouldn't give up anything. I sold my company in 2010. I don't need to do another one. I started one up in 2014. It didn't stop me. I work 60 hours a week on it because I love it and I want to do these things and I really enjoy what I'm doing. So, I am what I am, and I probably wouldn't change much.
Ryan, tell us a little bit about what you might do differently. You kind of gave some hints to it before.
Yeah, I definitely would have been more picky about who I was getting married with, right? I also should have taken the advice of my lawyer at the time, but I was just too eager to go. So, what else do I do differently? Well, I've done it again and again. So, I mean, every business I've started since then has learned from the previous mistakes or trials or tribulations. So, it's very rare for an entrepreneur to be successful right out of the gate. If you talk to any of them, they've all had either they started a lot later or they've had a lot of failures under their belt. I just don't hear about it that often. And I'd also probably take advantage of more non-dilutive capital, especially out of the university when you come out of college, like SBIR grants, etc. They're awesome. For whatever reason, I just did the investor capital route instead. But I had friends who use those to build their companies, and it's an excellent program, and their businesses are highly successful right now.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. Last but not least, Janet, tell us about, what you might have done do differently.
Well,
Now.
I think what I said earlier, understanding, I think for me, I always thought medical device was always my focus. I always loved it because you can see a tangible product that results in that. But staying in the same sector, if I had done that early on, I think I would have. I've just seen the difference between the last 2 companies that I founded. I've moved so much quicker, including issuance of new patents and intellectual property that we've gained, and having the respect of the industry sector. They know me. They know that I'm the one that invented the first non-contact robotic device for body contouring. So, when I speak to people, and we're going to do robotics again with this one. So when I speak to people, they know that I have that expertise. When I founded my first company in Texas, which is the one for functional imaging technology for cancer detection, I did that because I'd lost my mother. So that was a tribute to my mother. And I'm very proud of it. It probably will end up being my biggest legacy because it's something that she came from Central America to go to college here. And when she got sick, and I spent a lot of summers in Central America. I saw the difference in what the United States has. We're a very rich country to be able to have MRIs and PET CTs all over the world is unusual. You just don't see that many. But in the United States, we're really fortunate to have those every place. To have use of contrast agents is something that's not ideal for patients. So I felt that was important to eliminate. And we did that with that new technology that I created. That is something that will go every place in the world. You'll be able to plug it in India and Central America, small little poor countries will be able to have access for their patients. That makes me very proud. But that time that I spent, like Tom said, $250 million took a lot out of me. And I think I could have still made a huge difference in the world had I done other business sectors, because we could have helped the doctors, we could have helped the patients. It's a win-win. That's what I always seek, win-win-win. Tenacity is important, I think. Passion is important. And like everyone has said, and what Ryan said is important, to make sure that when you raise capital, that you get the right partners that see your vision and understand that they're betting on the jockey. They're not betting on the horse, they're betting on the jockey, and they have to be behind you all the way. It is important to build that network of mentors and people, and to have people that are your friends. I've made sure that I have many, many long standing relationships, and you're one of those, Mitch. So I think those are some of the lessons. Everybody's been rich with knowledge, I think. I really appreciate participating in this.
I think I can add one last thought about things I learned that I would do differently. And I think, David, you mentioned having had to pivot numerous times. I mean, Tom's very similar. I've tried to incubate numerous other businesses out of IPS, similar to what David has done. I haven't been that successful with any of them, frankly, at this point, but that doesn't stop us. But I had one that we had invested quite a bit in terms of doing hybrid propulsion for large vehicles, buses and trucks and things like this. We had the know-how and talent and to do that. And we threw a lot of money at it, and we were not getting traction fast enough. And we were burning through a lot of money. We were a profitable company, but I was throwing everything into this side thing, and we loved it. And I had a friend of mine who was a retired exec from my Symbol Technologies days. I asked him to come take a look at us and tell me what the advice was. And he looked at the business for several weeks. He came in and took a look at what was going on. He spoke to our potential customers. He spoke to our suppliers. He spoke to everybody. He came into my office, Paul Severino, my partner, and I office, after about a month, and said, as we said to him, what do you suggest? And he said, shut it down. I said, what do you mean shut it down? We've got so much invested. We love this thing. It's the great technology. He said, I don't care how much money you spent, and I don't care how great the technology is. You're not making money with it. You're not going to make any money with it, and you don't have any more money to throw into it. So shut it down. So I think the important thing I would do differently, and I've done differently since then, is always have my eyes open up. What am I doing when I make these investments? And knowing when to leave, when it's time to leave, is important, because not everything will be successful. David, you've gone through this, and Tom, I know Janet, we've all gone through this. Knowing when to leave is as important as knowing when to get in. So I'll sort of close my remarks with that. What I'd like to do, Jill, maybe we could throw this open to some of the Q&A, any questions and that the participants may have.
Absolutely, sure, yes. Thank you again to all the panelists.
And thank you, by the way, I want to have my thanks also to all of you for taking time out of your busy days to do this for NYT and taking the call.
So one of the questions in the chat is from Saman. So all of you started your entrepreneurship a long time ago, but lots of things have changed now. How would you start if you started now, and what steps would you take?
I can answer that. Although I started my original company 34 years ago, I'm still starting companies regularly. I just started another company just about a month ago. So the one thing that's really important is being properly capitalized. A lot of the entrepreneurs mentioned that there's a lot of great ideas that people have had, but if they don't have the capital and the plan behind it, they fall short. There's a ton of great products, great companies out there that just fail, and it's not because they didn't have great solutions. I always tell people that we're an overnight success, 34 years in the making. We've always been creating really cool stuff. It just wasn't the right time, right place, or we didn't have the right capital behind us. And the other thing is, you can't be afraid to make mistakes. You have to make mistakes. It's the only way that you're going to be successful, is by making, mistakes, but realizing them quickly. As Mitch just said, you have to realize at a certain point, this isn't going anywhere, and make, that change to pivot.
I got some idea if I can kick in here. If I were to do it again, like I mentioned before, in 1980, there were no models about how to start a company. And that's why I made my 5-year plan, because I thought that's what I needed. But today, to do it today, and I've seen this in a lot of these business incubators, I've been to Y Combinator, invested in many of their companies, and I've served as a mentor. What I would say is, number one, do something that you love. I think one thing that you've heard from all of us is we're doing something that we love, because you're going to be working a lot of lonely hours on this for not a lot of money. And you got to make sure you love this, or you're going to really start to resent it. Secondly, is have that support system, whether it's a family such as my wife, who supported me in this totally, or as Janet mentioned, have that network of mentors. Have mentors that you can bounce things off of. Maybe they're not going to help you, but at least it's someone you can talk to. Third is identify a problem that you really think that can be solved, and make it a real problem that people will be willing to pay to solve. And the fourth one, David mentioned this quite a bit, but I'd say even go further. Have a business plan. Do a market analysis. What's the potential market out there? How are you going to reach these people? Put together a budget. Figure out your cash flow, whether that means capital, or whether ongoing income, or whether you've got enough saved up to get you through this. But actually take a look at this and make sure that you're going to be able to survive. And, one, it tells you how to run this company, what to do. Secondly, it gives you metrics that you can check against and monitor and tweak as you go on. So that would be my advice if you want to start a business, how you should do it
And
today.
to build off of that, like a lot of failed enterprises might have created a solution, but there was no problem. Maybe the entrepreneur just thinks that it's a good idea, which happens a lot. And so you guys are in college. You can pick up the phone. You can call people, business leaders, executives, stakeholders, and just ask them questions. You could say, hey, I'm doing a project for university. Can I ask some questions? And just don't tell them what you're doing, but ask them, is this a problem? Like, do you need a solution for it, et cetera? And you can, we just did a project with the Sony Brook company, part of the iCore program. We had to interview 173 people. We got a lot of good insights out of that. And my scientists got practice calling and interviewing people, but that's something you should do before you start anything. Just see if people would buy it first.
Janet, anything you'd like to add on to this? That what's different today?
Yeah,
I mean,
yes.
I know your Bellamy is only like, what, 2 years old? So
Right.
it's
right.
not like,
It's a young company, and we're finding that, I think what I said, when you start out, you want to go for experts, talk to the world experts in that sector, see if you can access them. And Ryan's idea that while you're still in school, you can do that. I think it's important, though, to get out there. And even though I think it was Ryan or Tom that said, you can be boxed in by large companies. I think the large companies, when you first start out, are important, because they give you training so you can get exposure to start out. And then all the while, you can also be working on your ideas. I think it's a good idea to, you get access to training in a way you can't from a large company. And I think working and building your network at that point of mentors that you can go back to ask, they'll get to know you. They'll know who you are, just like you've been, Mitch, for Ryan. I think that, that was probably very helpful that Ryan had that experience. So we haven't mentioned that before, but it is a concept that I think is important.
Jill, do we have any other questions there?
We do, yeah. So from Jeffrey's asking, do your companies tend to hire New York Tech graduates? And the second part of his question is, do you see value in data science or computer science degrees for your companies or other companies out there?
We definitely hire from NYIT as well as 3 other colleges. So, we're always looking for great resumes. And, our world's in AI and developing machine learning and smart sensors and devices. So we're always looking for talent to come to the company. And, I think Long Island's a great place to be able to get that talent. There's some incredible colleges, on Long Island. We have access to tons of resources. And, for us, it's our home. This is where we want to, grow the business on Long Island.
Yeah, I'll kick in. We haven't hired New York Tech alumni yet because we're in Houston and this hasn't been convenient. But normally my company would look more for somebody in computer science, but I do want to say that if you're interested in data science, one of my daughters does that, and she's just, her career is skyrocketing. So you can't go wrong either way, I would think, if you're debating.
And I'm in San Antonio, Texas, in Orlando is our technical office. We do hire individuals for internships, paid internships, particularly in engineering and computer science, and knowledge of that area is of interest to us.
Fantastic. Thank you. We have time for one more question. If you're starting a new business and looking for partners, selecting them, what criteria do you use? With your experience and lessons learned, any parameters or structures you would like to use or can recommend?
I can just share one. I've done quite a few partnerships over the years, and partnerships are like marriage. They don't always work. So you always have to be thinking of what the divorce or what the separation is going to be looking for, and put good documentation together when you do a partnership to protect yourself. And very rarely give up majority control unless you're getting a lot of value for that. So that's, one of the things I've learned from all the different partnerships I've done over the years.
I know in my case with partnerships, you're looking for somebody that's different from you. If you've already got you, then you don't need two of you. First off, you don't gain any incremental knowledge, and two, you set up a potential for a lot of internal conflict where people do strengths are the same strengths. So you try to find complementary skills, and that I think is really, really important.
But at the same point, you do want them to be like you and that they share the same values.
Right.
They look at the business the same way. They have the same goals and things like that.
Yeah. You can't alter the value stream of a person that's there, but if they come with other talents and your fundamental core values are aligned and your goals are aligned and you respect each other's values and the differences, then that's the basis for, as best as you can, get a good partnership. I know with my partner, we've been in business for 15 years, and we worked together as co-workers for 15 years before that. So, we still remain friends, which I don't know a lot of people can be in business with somebody for that much time and still walk away being friends. But I don't know a lot of people that are married that long that are still friends. So it's not that unusual.
Partnerships are really rare.
Human relationships 101, I think.
I think I only know Mitch. I think you and another friend of mine are the only two businesses I know that have partners that are still going after a long time. It's very, very rare to have partners. So if you do have a partner and you're looking for one, just make sure there's, I guess, performance-based clawbacks in there. In case they fizzle out, they won't walk away with half your company or whatever if they don't do any work after the first 3 months or something. So just have some performance-based KPIs in there for it.
You need to know people. That's a really important skill.
Yeah, I agree.
Any other questions?
Thank you all once again.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just going to share a quick ending video from our Dean, Dr. Beheshti, but I'd really like to thank Mitch and Tom and David and Ryan and Janet today for taking the time and sharing all of this great information with our students and guests. Just one moment.
Thank you to everyone for attending.
Thank you also for joining us.
Thank you, our panelists, for the great presentation and discussion. Thank you all for participating in this event. My thanks go to the colleagues who made this event happen, Dr. Rob DeFazio, Assistant Dean Jane Polizzi, and the College of Engineering staff, Ms. Jill Rogers. Please tune in for the next talk in the spring semester, as it will be advertised through the same channels you learned about this talk. Have a great afternoon.
So thank you all once again, and happy holidays to everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.